Thank you, Jim Harbaugh. Thank you for restoring the program back to a place of legitimacy. Thank you for getting recruiting back to somewhere we can be proud of. Thank you for a lot of good memories over the past 6 seasons. Thank you for getting to the final weekend in 2016 and 2018 of the regular season with a shot to go to the playoff. Thank you for bringing the Jordan jersey, the Michigan-Jordan partnership. And thank you for being a lifelong Michigan fan. But it's time to go. We thank you for your service. You've done all that you could. And hopefully Michigan's next coach, the guy who replaces you, is the guy to restore this program back to where you almost had him. You almost had him, Jim. And I wish you could have broke through. And I was more excited about you coming from San Francisco, leaving the NFL, when you were in a lot of ways at the peak of the pro sport in your profession. 6th best winning percentage in the NFL all time. 3 straight NFC championship appearances, a Super Bowl appearance. He came back to Michigan to overcome Rich Rod and Brady Hoke's 7 years of just kind of mediocre football. There were a lot of highs, but we've hit a low. Back-to-back losses to Michigan State and Indiana. It's time for Jim Harbaugh to go. We've got my 6 takeaways and a lot of questions for this Michigan football program coming up in the Michigan Football Report right now. Michigan loses to Indiana 38-21, breaking a 24-game winning streak Michigan had over the Hoosiers, and you guys know how many in the last decade at least, how many of those were right down to the wire. Jim Harbaugh had a couple overtime wins against the Hoosiers, but last year Shea Patterson threw for 5 touchdowns, and really Michigan destroyed Indiana when a lot of folks thought, oh, that could be a close game. Joe Milton had a really bad first half, but turned it on in the second half, but not really counted. And I think that's the story of this team so far this season. You see Milton ends up with 344 yards passing, but he couldn't get it done in the first half. Indiana went into halftime with a huge lead. Milton throws 2 interceptions late when really Michigan had a glimmer of hope to come back and win this game. But I think when you look at Indiana, who moves to 3-0, has beat Penn State, has beat Michigan now, Michael Penix Jr., I don't think this guy's a very good passer, by the way. He throws the ball, looks like a sidearm pitcher sometimes. When he drops 30 of 50, he drops, 312 yards, that it says they're doing? Touchdown. 342, sorry, I'm blind here. 342 yards against Michigan, and he just had answers for Michigan's defense all day long. Don Brown couldn't get it done. Jim Harbaugh couldn't get it done. So I want to hear you guys. 1-word reaction. You know what? You can type more than 1 word if you want. If you've got 1 word like fuck, shit, bitch, mother, fuck, shit, that's fine too. But if you just want to blow up the comments, let's vent together. The comment section of this video will be the Michigan football venting section for the rest of today, into tomorrow, and throughout this week. But I have 6 takeaways for this game. Get down in the comments, blow it up with your comments. 1-word reaction's fine too, but I don't think anybody saw this bad of a loss coming. Here's my first takeaway. Jim Harbaugh's lost this team. That team came out uninspired, unimaginative, with no game plan. So has he lost his coaches too in a lot of ways? And maybe only one guy, Ronnie Bell, had a game that you can even brag about. Bell with 6 catches on the day, 149 yards, a touchdown, 24 yards per catch. And when Michigan was just struggling early on, he had that one long catch when he gets up and the camera's on him, and he kind of screams, "Come on, let's go!" And that was a point where I thought, hey, maybe one guy in this team has some fire. Maybe one of the guy in this team cares if you lose to Indiana from the first time since probably most of these kids' parents were in elementary school. That's how long it's been. 1987, 33 years since this team has lost. I think Joe Milton's mom was only like 41 years old. So Milton's mom was like 7 or 8 years old the last time Michigan lost to Indiana. Just think about how crazy that is. I think Jim Harbaugh has not only lost the team, but it seems like he's lost his coaching staff. There was no game plan on offense. There was no game plan on defense. Special teams is just mediocre. Michigan did nothing exciting today. And frankly, as a fan, it's an uninspiring product at this point. So it's pretty clear to me that Michigan's time with Jim Harbaugh as the coach is coming to an end. They're not going to extend his contract at this point. They just can't. They just can't do it. So who should be Michigan's next head coach? This is probably one of the worst seasons to try and hire a college football coach of all time because coronavirus and all that goes into that. But secondly, there's not that many great up-and-coming coaches that Michigan would have a shot at or would really even take a chance with. Probably the best two, frankly, are ones that are like, unhireable. Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, who's worst violation after all the recruiting stuff ended up being a phone call to a escort service in the city of Detroit, ironically, when he was head coach Ole Miss. He's got Liberty crushing it as we're filming this. I think they just beat Virginia Tech. And then how about Art Briles, right? All the crazy stuff that happened at Baylor, it turns out, if you read the court documents, Outkick Clay Travis did an article about that, it turned out that Art Briles really didn't do anything he was accused of. So who should be Michigan's next head coach? A lot of other candidates. Luke Fickell out there, potentially one. Ohio State guy, I know. But I wouldn't even know where to start. But let me know who you guys think. Comment below. Number 2, it can't wait. Don Brown has to go. This defense is terrible. Terrible. This is 5th year as Michigan's defensive coordinator. They have no game plan. They just let Michigan State and Indiana's quarterbacks back-to-back have career days. Michael Penix Jr. just torched Michigan. Take a look at the total yards here. Indiana was just trying to play keep away at the end. They weren't even trying. They probably got 600 yards. 460 yards of offense for the Indiana Hoosiers. Stevie Scott with 97 yards rushing. Samson James with 25 yards rushing. Penix, 342. Then you got Ty Frygloggle, 7 catches, 142. Whop Filler, 11 catches for 79 yards. It's unbelievable. They just absolutely torched Don Brown. And a fan of ours sent this to us. You guys can go buy them if you want. I thought I'd tell you about them. Fire Don Brown t-shirts. I just ordered one. They're $23.99. It's a pretty good price to tell people to fire Don Brown. You just go to chatsports.com. We created a redirect for you to make it easy because it was some long, stringy URL or whatever. So I want to make it easy for you guys. Chatsports.com/fire Don Brown. Fire Don. Chatsports.com/fire Don. Get you that Mays Fire Don Brown t-shirt. And there is going to be so much to talk about around this program coming up in the next 6, 7, 8 weeks. There's only, 5 weeks to the Ohio State game, 5 Saturdays from now. After that, they've got one game, the championship week game, but that's 5 weeks from Jim Harbaugh being a lame duck coach with 1 year to go and a contract that's expiring. I think we could have an explosive amount of news over the next 6, 7 weeks. So go ahead and subscribe, hit that red button. Thank you so much to those of you who have. Those of you who are just watching for the first time, subscribe. You'll never miss a video for us. We're doing videos almost every single day. Number 3, Gaddis and Milton were all hype. Joe Milton's stats the last 2 weeks are looking good when you think about, yards. 300 yards last week, 344 yards this week, 3 touchdowns. Joe Milton. But they were crap yards. They were all when Michigan was down double digits. And when it came down to it, when they cut the game to 10, he threw an ugly interception. Another time, Ronnie Bell was wide open by about 25 yards and on third down, and Milton overthrew him by 3-4 yards. It was all crap yards. He turned out to be 18 of 34, but they were just passing in the second half trying to get into this game. And he couldn't hold a candle to his competition, Michael Penix Jr., who underrated guy. He certainly came in with no hype like Joe Milton has. They had just about the same amount of passing yards, 344 to 342. But, no interceptions for Penix. And frankly, Penix made all the right plays when it counted. And Joe Milton really didn't. And those 2 interceptions, kind of in the end of the day, I know it was a 17-point game, but those could have been scoring drives. You hit Ronnie Bell for the other pass that went over his head. It could be a different ball game. Even despite all the terrible play on the defense for Michigan, Michigan could have had a chance to beat it, but they didn't have the right quarterback to do it. Running backs, they don't exist for Michigan football anymore. We thought 2 weeks ago, we thought 2 months ago, we thought 6 months ago, Michigan had 4 running backs that were capable of getting the job done. But these stats are unbelievable. 6 carries for Haskins, 3 for Evans, 1 for Charbonnet, 1 for Charbonnet. 1 for Charbonnet, right? That's unbelievable. 2 for Blake Corum for -3 yards. Your running backs as a total, let's do quick math. Is that 19 plus 5, 24, 28, -3, 25 yards for the running backs. That's unbelievable. Michigan as a team, 18 carries for 13 yards. You had negative yards out of Milton, Giles Jackson, and of course, Joe Milton, 5 carries for -8 yards. Of course, sacks, etc. go into that. So, just a nightmare from a running back perspective, and those running backs really have just kind of disappeared, and I'm super, super annoyed by it altogether. Next up, number 4, out of my 6-pack of takeaways. This is the worst secondary of my life. This is worse than anything Jim Harbaugh put out. Rich Rodriguez put out. By the way, Rich Rodriguez, we'll talk about that on Monday. He had some really interesting points on his podcast about the state of the Michigan program and who's to blame. It's the worst secondary of my life. Michael Penix Jr., the week after Rocky Lombardi drops 300-plus all over Michigan, and when a freshman wide receiver goes for 200 yards receiving, Michael Penix, 30 for 50, 342, 3 touchdowns. Every single time he threw the ball, it was either an Indiana touchdown, pass interference, or Michigan jumped off sides. I swear it was. You're not going to tell me any different no matter what the highlights say. 342 yards passing for him. And look, if it was a close game, it would have been about 450 because he had like 300 something in the end of the third quarter. They didn't really pass the ball much in the fourth. It was an embarrassing performance by the secondary. Don Brown had learned nothing because the zone plays they put in were just getting torched all first half, frankly, and nothing worked when it came to the pass defense. G-Mon Green, Vincent Gray. Where were the backups? Where were putting in more safeties to get anybody else in at cornerback? Daxton Hill as a corner instead of a safety. It was a disaster. This is the worst secondary of my life. How about the defensive line? Well, Aiden Hutchinson got hurt early on, so okay, they missed their best guy, second best guy, but that doesn't let this defensive line off the hook. The interior defensive line, they've done nothing. They put no pressure all day. Kwity Paye had 1 or 2 plays, but Luigi Verlaine, David Ajobo, and the other players they had in there, I'm thinking Taylor Upshaw, none of them did anything, and they got no push. They got pushed around by Indiana's offensive line. When Indiana wanted to run the ball, they did. And this defensive line, again, it was all hype. I take some blame for this hype. I hyped him up. After the first week, producer Dylan behind the scene, he's like, you think these guys are better than Chase Winovich and Rashawn Gary? Well, that's what I was saying about Hutchinson and Kwity Paye, but it was all hype. The Fire Down Brown shirt. Make sure you don't miss out on this one because it could be a collector's item soon enough when Don Brown is off into the sunset, no longer coaching this disastrous Michigan football defense. And before we get to my final point, I'll toss the final point up on the screen here, Dylan. I'll make kind of a secondary point here. Dylan McCaffrey is still enrolled at Michigan. He's still taking classes, whether they're online, in person, I'm not really sure. But he could come and start for this team next week against Wisconsin if there's a game, which there probably won't be because Wisconsin is a corona-infested nightmare. But that's just something to think about. Jim Harbaugh won't get it done. Look, I said at the beginning of the show, thank you for restoring the program to a spot where they have the ability, hopefully, to get a championship-level coach. Thank you for bringing some really strong memories. 2016, 2018 were really fun seasons in a lot of ways. Won some really fun home games. Wisconsin a couple times, Penn State a couple times, Notre Dame last year in that torrential downpour. Those 3 straight shutouts in the 2015 season, like your 5th, 6th, and 7th, or 4th, 5th, 6th game. First team in like 20 years to pitch 3 straight shutouts. But it just wasn't enough, Jim. You're not going to get it done. There's no point in trying anymore because we all know what's going to happen the rest of the season. Even if they win a few games, they're not going to even come close against Ohio State. And in year 6, you have no secondary, you have no quarterback, you have no offensive line. I know there were injuries. Doesn't matter. This is year 6. I am sorry. Jim Harbaugh is not going to get it done. And it pains me to say that because one of the happiest days of my life, top 5 happiest days of my life, was when Michigan actually got Jim Harbaugh to be their head coach. And I thought there was no way by year 6 Michigan wouldn't be the number 1, 2, 3 team in America. So answer the question for me one more time. Who should be Michigan's next head coach? I don't know where to start. I'd love to hear you guys give me some ideas. We'll maybe do a coaching hot board here later in the week. But answer that question for me. I'm going to have another show for you coming up probably tomorrow morning, maybe tonight, with all the questions I got on social media after the show. So if you haven't, follow me on Twitter at James Yoder. Subscribe to the channel. Hit this button right here. Please subscribe to the channel. There's going to be so much to talk about over the next few weeks. And I guess if you're going to watch some more Michigan football content, I got some for you right here and right here. But who the hell knows? All right. Michigan Football Report. We'll be back tomorrow. Go Blue.